You must
Alone
listen
at the
closely.
wedding, she sat in
The guard
silence.
knows of our
Then the Wolf
plan.
King whispered,
We have to act
"Act
tonight."
like you're with me."
Are you certain?
The bride, radiant in her ivory dress, stood at the altar, her smile like a vision from a fairy tale. Yet, among the shining faces and the well-wishing crowd, one person sat in silence: Ilara. She sat at the back of the hall, away from the others in the shadow of a towering pillar, her delicate hands folded in her lap. Her long, raven-black hair, typically wild and free, was twisted into an intricate braid that framed her pale face. Her eyes, however, were anything but bright and hopeful. They were distant, looking beyond the festivities, beyond the bright lights and the laughter, into something much darker. Her sister, Lyanna, was marrying the heir to the throne today. The union of two great houses, celebrated by the kingdom as the beginning of a new era. But for Ilara, it felt like the closing of a chapter she had never wanted to open in the first place. The room seemed alive with joy, but Ilara felt as though she were in a dream, trapped in a place where everything moved without her. The bright red roses lining the aisles, the sweet notes of a violin filling the air, it was all a beautiful illusion. She was the invisible one, the forgotten one, lost in the sea of well-wishers. Her heart wasn't in the celebration. It hadn't been for a long time. As the ceremony unfolded before her, Ilara's thoughts drifted to the shadows, to the memories she could never escape. Her eyes wandered to the stained glass window at the far end of the hall, where the moon hung heavy in the night sky. It glowed with an unnatural light, almost as if it were watching her, as though it understood the weight of her thoughts. A soft voice broke through her reverie. "Act like you're with me." Ilara froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was low, almost a whisper, but it sent a shiver through her body. Slowly she turned her head, and there, standing beside her, was a man unlike any other. Tall, with the broad shoulders of a warrior, his dark hair falling over his eyes in an unruly mass. His clothes were simple yet regal, as though he had just stepped out of a shadow. He was handsome, but there was something about him that made him seem more like a beast than a man. The Wolf King, Kale. Ilara had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. He was the ruler of the northern lands, a kingdom far beyond the reach of normal men, and he had the power to command the wolves. He was the king of beasts, feared and admired in equal measure. They said he could control the winds, the stars, and even the blood that ran through a man's veins. And yet, here he was, standing next to her at her sister's wedding, with a casual air that sent a chill down her spine. She stared at him for a moment, her lips parted in surprise. What do you mean?" she whispered back. He didn't answer at first. Instead, his piercing gaze swept over the crowd, his eyes cold and calculating. His presence seemed to push the warmth out of the room, as if a shadow had fallen over the bright gathering. "They're watching you." He nodded toward the guests, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "Pretend for just a moment that you belong here, that you are part of this celebration." Ilara's brow furrowed in confusion. She looked back at the guests, the nobles and courtiers all dancing in a delicate ballet of politics and smiles. They didn't know her, didn't care to know her. They saw her as nothing more than a shadow in the background, a forgotten sister. I don't understand," she said, her voice wavering. "Why do you want me to?" Kale interrupted, his voice low but insistent. "Because they need to think you're with me." His eyes flicked to the front where her sister and her new husband stood, exchanging vows. "You're being ignored, and that will not do." Ilara's heart raced, her confusion deepening, but something in the tone of his voice made her listen. It wasn't just an order, it was a warning. She felt it in the air, in the way the shadows seemed to grow longer, in the way the moonlight outside grew brighter, casting an almost otherworldly glow on the hall. Kale's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Ilara felt as if the entire room had vanished. It was just the two of them standing in the silence. His gaze was intense, as if he could see straight through her, peeling back the layers she had carefully hidden from the world. And there was something in those eyes, something ancient and unsettling, that made her heart race. She wasn't sure why, but she felt compelled to obey him. The words that had come from his mouth were simple, but they had a weight, a force that she could not ignore. Slowly she stood up, smoothing the edges of her gown. The room seemed to hold its breath as Alara walked toward the front, where her sister and her new husband stood. She could feel the eyes of the guests on her as she passed, their gazes like arrows, but she held her head high, as Kale had suggested. She pretended. She smiled, even though it didn't feel real. But in that moment, something strange began to happen. The shadows that had lingered at the edge of her vision seemed to shift, moving closer to her. The moonlight outside flickered, and Alara's heart skipped a beat. When she reached the front of the hall, she dared to glance at Kale once more. He was standing by the doors, watching her with those dark, intense eyes, his lips curling into a small, satisfied smile. The wedding ceremony continued, but Alara's thoughts were far from the vows being exchanged. She felt as though the entire world had shifted, that she had crossed some invisible threshold into a realm she didn't understand. As the final words were spoken, Alara's gaze wandered to the high, vaulted windows, where the moon hung like a sentinel in the sky, casting its eerie glow on everything below. It was a cold, haunting light, not the gentle glow of love, but the light of something much older, much darker. And in that moment she felt it, a presence, watching her, waiting for her. Alara shuddered, her heart pounding in her chest. What had Kale meant? Why had he wanted her to act like she was part of this world, part of this celebration? Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice, soft, low, and close to her ear. "It's not over, Alara," she froze. The voice was unmistakable. Kale. He was standing behind her now, his breath warm against her skin. His presence seemed to fill the space, pushing away the coldness that had settled in her chest. "You're not safe here," he whispered. "Not for long." Alara's breath caught in her throat, and she turned to face him. His expression was unreadable, his eyes colder than before. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kale's lips barely moved as he spoke again. "The curse is waking, and it's coming for you." Cliffhanger. The curse was real, and it was hunting her. Alara's heart raced as she stepped into the moonlit courtyard of Kale's castle, her gown trailing behind her like a ghost. The wedding, the celebration, the world she had once known, all of it seemed like a distant memory, swallowed by the shadow that now loomed over her. The distant echo of wolves howling outside the walls of the castle only deepened the sense of unease that churned in her stomach. Kale, ever the silent figure beside her, led the way through the towering gates. His presence was overpowering, as if the very air around him bent to his will. His eyes never left her, always alert, always calculating, as though waiting for something. Alara couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a place where she didn't belong, but at the same time, she felt an odd pull, a magnetic force drawing her deeper into the castle's cold stone walls. "Do you think the wolves are watching?" she asked softly, her voice barely a whisper, as if afraid to break the spell that had settled over them. Kale didn't look at her, but his voice was firm, low. "They always watch." The castle loomed over them like a dark mountain, its stone walls blackened by time and weather, its windows like eyes staring into the night. The wind howled around them, though the night sky above remained clear, the moon high and full, casting a silver glow across everything it touched. Alara could almost feel the weight of the curse in the air, a heavy, oppressive presence that seemed to suffocate everything it touched. As they walked, she couldn't help but glance around, taking in the strange beauty of the place. The courtyard was filled with overgrown ivy, twisted statues of forgotten gods, and fountains that once might have been sparkling with water but now sat still and silent. It was a place out of time, a world within a world. Yet despite the eerie atmosphere, there was something strangely alluring about it. It felt ancient. Kale led her through a set of grand wooden doors into the main hall, a place that was as cold as the stone from which it was built. Alara's eyes widened as she stepped inside. The walls were lined with portraits of men and women whose eyes seemed to follow her every move. The tapestries hanging from the walls depicted scenes of wolves in battle, wolves by moonlight, wolves hunting, all with eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. "Is it always like this?" Alara asked, her voice echoing through the vast space. Kale nodded, his expression unreadable. "The castle is alive in its own way. The wolves, they are its guardians." Alara shivered. There was something unsettling about the way Kale spoke, as if the wolves were not merely animals, but sentinels, watchers, protectors, or perhaps something more. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. They passed through the hall into another chamber, this one more intimate, though just as dark. The fireplace crackled with an ancient flame, casting flickering shadows against the stone walls. In the center of the room was a long, oval table, and around it sat figures in shadow, not quite human, but not entirely animal either. Their eyes gleamed in the dim light, and their sharp, elongated features gave them an otherworldly, almost predatory look. Alara's pulse quickened as she realized that Kale was not just a king among men. He was the leader of something else entirely, a world of shadows, wolves, and ancient magic. "Who are they?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kale turned to her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "My court." Alara blinked, her confusion growing. "But they're not human." Kale's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile. "No, not entirely." The figures around the table seemed to stir, but none of them spoke. Their gazes lingered on Alara, their eyes glowing with something primal, something that sent a chill down her spine. She could feel the weight of their stares, the unspoken power they carried. Kale's voice broke through the tension. "This is where you will stay for the time being. You'll be safe here, for now, safe." The word felt hollow in her ears. How could she be safe in a place so full of shadows and secrets? "What is this place?" she whispered, stepping back slightly, her hands instinctively reaching for the door. "It is my kingdom," Kale said quietly, his eyes never leaving her. "But it is more than that. It is a place where the curse lives. A place where time bends and the world outside fades away. You'll understand soon enough." Alara's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the rumors, the whispered stories of Kale's kingdom, a place where magic twisted and turned, where the wolves ruled, and where no one ever left unchanged. She had never believed the stories, until now. She turned toward the door, but Kale was already there, blocking her path. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp, like a wolf's in the dark. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, his voice low and calm, though there was an underlying tension in his words. "I don't belong here," she said, her voice wavering. "I don't know what this is or why you brought me here, but I can't stay. I can't." Kale reached out, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. The touch wasn't harsh, but it was insistent, and it stopped her in her tracks. For a moment there was silence. His touch was like fire, burning through her skin, yet she couldn't pull away. Something in her chest tightened, something she couldn't explain. "You're more connected to this place than you realize," he said softly. "You can't run from it no matter how hard you try." Alara swallowed, her mind racing. What did he mean? What connection did she have to this place? To him? Before she could ask another question, the door to the hall burst open, and a tall figure stepped inside. His eyes glowed a fierce amber, and his features were sharp and predatory, much like Kale's. But there was something different about him, something wild and untamed, as if he were barely contained by his own skin. "Alara," the man said, his voice like gravel. "It's time." Kale's eyes flicked to the man, a brief flash of something unreadable passing between them. He didn't speak, but Alara felt the tension in the room thicken. "Time for what?" Alara asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man, the one who had just entered, took a step closer, his eyes fixed on her. "You don't have much time. The curse is stirring, it calls to you, and you can't avoid it anymore." A chill ran through Alara's veins. She wanted to protest, to scream, to demand answers. But she couldn't. The air in the room was thick with power, with magic she couldn't understand, and Kale's presence, always so close, was like a constant weight on her chest. "Go to the wolves," Kale said quietly, his voice almost a command. "They will guide you." "Guide me where?" Alara asked, confused and frightened. "Into yourself," Kale replied. "Into the truth of who you are. The wolves will show you what you need to see." And with that, Alara had no choice but to follow. The wolves, she thought. What did they have to do with her? The man who had entered the room stepped aside, gesturing for her to follow him. His eyes flickered briefly to Kale, and for a moment, Alara saw something dark pass between them, something that spoke of old wounds, unfinished business, and a dangerous truth. "Come," the man said, "it's time for you to understand." Cliffhanger. And as she stepped into the courtyard, she saw them, wolves, their eyes glowing in the night, their bodies massive and powerful. She froze, her heart thudding in her chest. One wolf stepped forward, its golden eyes locked on hers. The world seemed to stop. And then the wolf spoke. Ilara stood frozen in the moonlit courtyard, her heart pounding in her chest. The massive wolves, their golden eyes glowing in the dark, circled around her like shadows in the night. Their presence was overwhelming, their power palpable in the cold air. But it was the wolves that made her shiver. It was the voice that had spoken, the voice of the one who stood before her. The wolf, its fur dark as the night itself, stepped closer, its eyes never leaving hers. For a moment, it seemed like the whole world held its breath. The moon above glowed brighter, casting everything in an eerie, almost magical light. "You are the key, Alara." The wolf's voice was deep, not just in her ears but in her very bones. It felt like a call from the past, a call that she had been running from for so long. Alara took a step back, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. What do you mean? Key to what? I don't understand." The wolf tilted its head, its eyes glowing even brighter. "The curse." Its voice was steady, almost gentle, as though it was speaking to a child. "You are connected to it. You cannot escape it. Not anymore." Alara's mind raced. What did the wolf mean? She had never asked for any of this. She had never asked for the curse, for Kale, for the wolves, or for any of the darkness that seemed to follow her wherever she went. She had lived in silence, in shadows, always trying to outrun the past. But now, standing here in this haunted courtyard, she realized that she could run no longer. She had been brought here for a reason. "But I'm just a girl," Alara whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know anything about curses. I don't have any magic." The wolf's gaze softened, its massive form almost a shadow against the silver light of the moon. "You have more power than you know." Before Alara could respond, a figure appeared from the shadows. Kale. His presence was like a storm, his dark eyes filled with something unreadable, something distant. He moved toward her with purpose, his steps deliberate and confident. The wolves parted for him, allowing him to approach. "The time has come." Kale's voice was low, almost a growl, but there was no malice in it, only a kind of resigned certainty. Alara turned to face him, her heart racing. She had so many questions, so many doubts. "What do you mean? What is happening? Why am I here?" Kale paused before answering, his eyes flickering to the wolves and then back to her. "The curse that binds me is also bound to you. It has always been. You're not just a witness to its power, you are its undoing." Her mind struggled to grasp his words. "What do you mean?" "I don't know anything about a curse. I've lived my life and nothing has ever happened. I'm just ordinary." Kale's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. "Ordinary." He said the word as if it were a lie, a heavy burden he had learned to carry. "You were born to break the curse. Whether you like it or not, it is your fate." Alara recoiled, her chest tightening. "No, I won't be a part of this. I won't be the one to end it." The wolf's eyes glowed brighter, its voice filling the air once more. "You have no choice, Alara. The curse is waking and you are the key to its release." Kale stepped forward, his expression hardening. "It's true. The curse is bound to the very blood that runs through your veins. It has always been since the moment you were born." The weight of his words hit her like a hammer. She staggered back, struggling to breathe, her world spinning. She had always known there was something wrong, something hidden deep inside her, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. "You're lying," she whispered, her voice breaking. Cale shook his head slowly, his face unreadable. "I wish I were." A soft wind blew through the courtyard, carrying with it the scent of the wolves, of the earth, of something ancient. The moon hung high above them, its pale light making the world around them seem unreal, as if they were caught in a dream. But this wasn't a dream. This was real, too real. "You are not just connected to the curse," Cale continued, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. "You are the curse's undoing. You are the one who can break it, but it will come at a cost." Elara shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "What cost? What are you asking me to do?" Cale's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Elara saw something vulnerable in them. "To save us all, you must be willing to sacrifice yourself. The curse will only be broken if you let go of everything you know, if you let go of the person you think you are." The wolf stepped closer to her, its voice rumbling like distant thunder. "You are not what you think you are, Elara." Her heart ached as she looked at Cale. "But I don't even know what this means. I'm just me." Cale took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "You are the one who can break it. You've always been the one." The wolves circled around them, their eyes burning with an intensity that made Elara's skin prickle. She could feel the power in the air, swirling around her like a storm, like something ancient and dangerous that was waiting to be unleashed. Cale reached out, his hand brushing her cheek with a touch that was both gentle and firm. For a moment their eyes locked, and in that moment Elara understood something. She understood the weight of his words, the burden he carried. He was asking her to choose whether she would accept the fate that had been set before her or to walk away from it all. "I can't," Elara whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know how." Cale's hand lingered on her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. His eyes softened, and for the first time since they had met, he looked at her with something that wasn't just power, but a kind of raw, vulnerable longing. "You don't have to know, Elara. You just have to trust me." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Trust. How could she trust him? How could she trust anyone in a world that had always been filled with lies and shadows? But the answer was clear. There was no escape. She had never really had a choice. "You're the only one who can stop it," the wolf said again, its voice low and full of gravity. The words echoed in her mind as if the world was pushing her toward an inevitable truth. Elara was the key. She was the one who could break the curse. But at what cost? Cliffhanger. And in that moment she realized the truth. The curse was not just a story. It was a force, a living thing, and it was coming for her. The ground trembled beneath Elara's feet, a low, deep rumble that seemed to come from the very bones of the earth. The air grew thick with tension, like the world was holding its breath. Cale stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the moon hung high in the sky, its light almost too bright, too cold. The wolves circled around them, their golden eyes glowing, their bodies silent but full of untold power. "Elara," Cale said softly, his voice breaking through the heavy silence, "it's time." She felt the weight of his words like a stone in her chest. Time. The word echoed in her mind, pulling her deeper into the reality she had tried so hard to avoid. The curse, the wolves, Cale, all of it was real. She had known it from the moment she had stepped into this dark, cursed castle. But now it was no longer a distant nightmare. It was here in the very air she breathed. The wolves stopped circling, their eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. They were not just animals. They were something more, something ancient, bound to the curse that had haunted her family for generations. And now they were waiting for her to make a choice she never wanted to face. Cale's hand rested gently on her shoulder, his touch both comforting and heavy with the burden he carried. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, his voice filled with quiet strength. "I'm here. We can face this together." Alara's breath caught in her throat. Together. That word meant something different now, something deeper than she had ever imagined. She had spent so long pushing people away, hiding from the truth, running from the past. But here, in this moment, in this place, she realized that she couldn't do it alone. The curse had never been just hers to bear. It had always been shared, tied to the bloodline, to the very land itself. She turned to face Kale, her heart racing. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Alara saw a flicker of something vulnerable in him, something raw and real. "You have to embrace your power," he said, his words slow and deliberate. "You have to let go of the fear that's holding you back. The curse can only be broken if you face it, if you confront what lies inside you." Alara closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. Her thoughts swirled, a whirlwind of confusion and fear. She had always been afraid of what she was, of what she might become. But she knew deep down that there was no more running. She could no longer hide from the truth. The curse was part of her. It always had been. "It's not just about breaking the curse," the wolf that had spoken earlier said, stepping closer. Its eyes gleamed with a fierce intensity. "It's about understanding it, about accepting it." Alara's eyes snapped open and she stared at the wolf, its voice ringing in her ears. Understanding, acceptance. The words felt like a weight, heavy and unyielding. How could she accept something so dark, so powerful? How could she embrace a curse that had brought only pain and sorrow to her family? But the answer was clear. She had no choice. To break the curse, she had to face it. She had to accept the darkness inside her, all of it. "You are the key, Alara," the wolf continued, its voice gentle now, almost comforting. "You hold the power to destroy the curse, but you must be willing to let go of everything. The past, the pain, the fear." Alara nodded slowly, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she was about to make. She turned to Kale, searching his face for some kind of reassurance, but what she saw there was not reassurance. It was something deeper. Something that spoke of sacrifice, of the things he had given up to stand here beside her. "You don't have to do this alone," Kale repeated, his voice softer now, almost tender. "You have me, and the wolves." For a moment, Alara felt a surge of emotion, a flood of feelings she had never allowed herself to feel before. Loneliness, longing, a need for something more than just survival. She had always thought she was alone in the world. But now, with Kale and the wolves standing by her side, she realized that she wasn't alone at all. She wasn't just breaking the curse. She was choosing to live, to embrace who she was, to embrace the power that had always been inside her. Alara took a deep breath and stepped forward, her feet moving with a certainty she had never known before. The wolves parted as she walked, their eyes following her every move. She could feel the weight of their gaze, their silent judgment. But this time it didn't scare her. This time she was ready. Kale stepped beside her, his presence steady and strong. "You're not alone," he repeated, his voice a steady anchor in the chaos that swirled around them. Together they approached the center of the courtyard where the moonlight was brightest. Alara felt the power in the air, the magic that had always been just beyond her reach, filling the space around them. It was like the very earth was holding its breath, waiting for her to make her choice. "The time has come, Alara," the wolf said, its voice deep and resonant. "The curse is waking, you must choose." Alara closed her eyes, her mind spinning with all the things she had learned, all the things she had feared. She could feel the curse, like a heavy weight in her chest, like a chain that had been wrapped around her heart for as long as she could remember. But now it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a part of her, a part she could no longer deny. With a final, steadying breath, Alara opened her eyes and lifted her head to the sky. The moon was full, its light shining down on her like a blessing and a curse. She could feel the power building, the magic that had always been tied to her bloodline, to her family, to the land itself. She was the key, the one who could break the curse. But to do that, she had to choose. She had to choose to embrace the darkness inside her. "Elara," Kale whispered, his voice like a gentle breeze, "you are ready." For the first time in her life, Elara felt it, the power that had always been within her, the strength to face the curse, the strength to face herself. With a deep breath, Elara raised her arms to the sky, her eyes closed as the power coursed through her. The wind howled around them, swirling like a storm, but she stood firm. She felt the curse within her, a dark, swirling force that threatened to consume her. But this time she didn't fight it. She let it in. She accepted it. And as she did, the world around her shifted. The air grew thick with magic, the earth beneath her feet trembled, and the wolves howled in unison, their voices rising in a song that was both ancient and powerful. The curse was waking, but this time it wasn't something to fear, it was something to conquer. Kale stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder, his presence a steady anchor. "You've done it, Elara." She opened her eyes and looked at him, her heart racing. The curse was broken. The power within her was no longer a burden. It was a gift. And as the moonlight bathed them both, Elara knew that this was only the beginning of something new, a life not defined by the curse, but by the strength she had found within herself. Cliffhanger.